Hi everyone, I'm Joanne and this is what I'm making today, this coat of many colors. I started off with a bathrobe that had a lot of stains on it from when I used to dye my hair and wear it. So it has all these brown stains and I'm so glad that I didn't throw it away because I was watching Tracy Myers again and I found some jackets that she made using bathrobes. So I took that idea and then I made it my own. And I guess it's kind of like, I had a good metaphor for that, and I forgot what it was. So maybe I'll remember it later. This is what I did. I got piles of fabrics, and I started just placing them and pinning them where I wanted them. And I wasn't sure in the beginning if I was going to be using my sewing machine or if I was going to be using a needle and thread. Instead of stopping myself from doing the project because I couldn't make my mind up, I just started pinning, and this is what I came up with. In my mind, I'm trying not to do match, but I've found that my brain keeps wanting to coordinate colors. It's kind of funny how that happens. And I have all these patches that were pre-cut that I bought for quilts that I never made. And they're already color coordinated. I've learned a lot through stages as I'm making this. One thing is that I needed to take this cuff and roll the cuff down. Another thing that I found out, and I only found this out as I'm going along, when I come to an obstacle, I have to figure out how to get through that obstacle. The second thing that I figured I should do is take my razor and cut the sleeve open from underneath where the seam is, so that way I have a flat sleeve to work with. So when I place my fabric down to sew it, both by hand and sewing machine, then I have a flat surface and I'm not, trying to reach inside and deal with that. As I said, I learned a lot of things as I was going, and I wished that I had cut from under the arm, right at the cuff, all the way down the entire garment to the end. In other words, the body and the sleeve. I wish that I had opened all the way down, so it would have made such an easier job for me. But for some reason, I stopped at just the sleeve. But like I said, I learned a lot as I was making this. So, I mean, if you can think of things that, if you've done this, or you can look and see what I'm doing and say, oh, you should have done this or you should have done that, then, feel free to comment. I'm always willing to learn, and I think that when people make comments that we can teach each other from, it makes it a fun video. I took out this fabric that it was a curtain, And I thought what I would do is fussy cut. That's what we call it when we do journals. We call it fussy cutting. When you take a fabric and you cut around an object, like these flowers, I wanted to cut around the flowers themselves and leaves. And when I went to sew them, then I would have, you know, just that image instead of doing the whole piece of fabric. It's pretty it's pretty fun. It's like doing a puzzle when you're doing it. If you don't get too caught up with having to match everything, and then that can stop your thought process. But, you know, have fun with it. That's what I always say, have fun with it. And I have to remind myself to have fun with it too. This is where I am pinning, and I'm pinning over the seam that's under the arm. And I should have said, Joanne, open that up. It would, you know, then you don't have to deal with that big, thick seam under the arm. For some reason, I said, I'll just fold the fabric over it and I'll work around it that way. In the long run, I would have made it a lot easier for myself if I just opened the entire thing up. But live and learn. I'll continue now to place pieces and fill in this section, one section at a time. These were my best friends. This because it helped pull the needle through. And when I would weave in and out, then I would have to grab it and then pull it through. And if that didn't work, I would use my thimble. And I couldn't find my real thimbles. I found these plastic, I think this is even actually from my granddaughter's kit that she has. That's like a toy thing. I used these Chanel needles, or chenille, however you say it. And of course my pins and my thread, which I had this thread. I didn't go out and buy it. Oh, I bought it sometime, but anyways, this is it. This is what I needed for supplies. I don't always like to give a list of supplies in the beginning because I feel like when you first start watching a video, you want to get right into it. Sometimes I'm really prepared, like when I coordinated all of these colors. And then there's other times as I'm going along in the project, I realize I didn't take the pocket off. And I should have taken the pocket off, both of them, so that I could work with them and cover them because, you know, you can't do that when you're sewing on both sides. Here's another thing I learned. If you have pockets, if you have belt loops, you need to cut them off because you need to, if you want to replace them, you need them off so that you can work around them. For this pocket, I decided to cut around the seam line so that I wouldn't have all that bulk in there, and then I could add my own fabric, which is going to cause bulk because I used velvet on one of the pockets. It was all good though because that's what I wanted for my pocket. You decide and then you'll have to work around it too. For this pocket, I decided to fussy cut around these daisies and put them on that velvet. I was going to applique them down on the velvet. I have my granddaughter Daisy, so I like to throw some daisies in there when I can. And the black against the green was superb. I just went very slow when I was doing this because the fabric was so thick. Remember, I'm going through terry cloth and velvet and that cotton which the daisy is made from. I only have a straight stitch on my Juki quilting industrial machine that I'm using here, so I can only use one stitch. I put it on about 2.75, and I just took my time and just went around the whole thing very slowly, and this is what it looks like. I was very happy with the outcome with this applique. So now it's ready to go on the jacket. It's ready to go on the jacket. The first thing I'm going to do, though, is I'm going to sew around the edge just to give it a top stitch. And then when I decide what I'm going to do for sewing, whether it's machine or quilting by hand onto the jacket, I want it, at least I want the top stitching to be done, because I want the velvet to fold under and not poke out anywhere, because it's a little slippery and it wanted to move on me a lot. This way it's nailed down and it's ready to go. I'll finish doing this and then I'll put it aside and I'll continue to work on the jacket. I have this really cool tool. It's called a skipjack. What you need it for is to go over bumps, really thick materials when you're working on jeans, or really thick materials. All you do is take the skipjack, you put it under the needle, right where you want to go over, you push it up and it makes a little bridge. Then you very slowly go over it, the really thick area, and then the skipjack pops out and you're done. You don't have to fuss with wheels going back and forth and wondering if you're going to go over that big hump. See how nice it works? I'm going to show you again on the other side. I just put the skipjack under to where I want it bridged, put the needle down, and then I just sew, and it just gives a lift so that it's a level surface for the sewing machine to sew on, and then it doesn't jam up on you and cause a big problem. So I wanted to show you, this is the third day, it's 9:15, and I finished the outside of the jacket. I finished the inside. I turned it inside out because I was working on that, but I have it all hand sewn, and this is what it looks like. I'm stepping out of my comfort zone and I'm being on camera to show you that after 3 days, not even 3 full days, probably, I want to say 15 or 20 hours, because when I start something, I'm like a dog with a bone. I don't want to stop. I hand stitched, and it's like basic basting stitch, running stitch, but it was a slow stitch project, so that I tried to remind myself as I was doing it to enjoy the process, even though I was trying to hurry up. I'm going to be sewing this part with the sewing machine. I decided this side, I already did it, and then after I did it, I said, you know, because this is the lapel, I'm going to probably want to do it with the sewing machine. So that's what it looks like. And I'll sew the sleeves back up once I'm done with it. But this is going to be covered up with fabric, but you can see that if you didn't do an inside and you just did an outside, it would be really interesting to have the stitches. I like the look of the stitches. It's kind of a quilted look. You can practice your quilting stitches even though it's very thick. So for me, it was a lost cause to practice and try to get them straight, because I didn't want it to be perfect anyways. That's not how I do my projects, especially when I'm upcycling. I like to have the freedom of don't worry about it. Oh, I'm ready to go on to the next step. It's my coat of many colors. All of my fabrics. I made a cathedral window quilt, and this was one of my favorite ones. It's just the olives. I just love that. And it was interesting finding some things that I've used over the years. This is one. And there was another one that was really, this is an old one from years ago. If you're a sewer, you might even recognize the pattern. And then the newer ones. So mixing the old with the new. Just did that upcycling video with the towels, and this was my favorite fabric. So I'm going to take this down to the sewing machine, and then I'm going to start putting one chunk of fabric at a time and finish this up, and then sew up the sleeves. The sleeves are the most challenging part of this with the sewing machine. Not as bad when you're sewing it by hand. I think that's why most people do this by hand, because unless you open up all the way down the length of it, which I really can't do that right now because I already sewed the patches by hand, it's probably the best bet just to open up all the way down. I'm learning as I go here. And the reason why it's so challenging is because, see this? This is flat, right? This is the end of the sleeve. It's all flat. And this is the cap of the sleeve. And see how it puffs up? It's really hard to get the sewing machine. I don't have a sewing machine arm. Mine is just flat because it's a industrial. So it can't go through and, well, actually I do have another one, but it's not working well with the fabric. It's too, fabric is too thick. Meanwhile, I'll just keep plugging along, even though it's a challenge, because that's what you do when you're on a project, right? But I wanted to show you just how challenging it is to get the fabric to lay flat when you're working on the cap of the sleeve. I do have one sleeve finished, and I'm really excited to be able to do the flat part of the jacket, because it's going to be a lot easier than working with the challenging part. But if you're doing this, you like a challenge. If not, you're just enjoying watching me have the challenge. And thank you for watching. And thank you for watching all the way to the end, because it puts me on the YouTube algorithm. And then you get to see more of my videos unless you hit the notification bell. That will automatically get you to see all of my videos. There we go. Now we have this part that's, again, it's like I can't lay this flat unless this was opened, which I should have done. Yep, hindsight, I should have done. And while I'm pinning, I have to make the decision which fabric is on the top as I'm going along. Sometimes I would have to unpin because I'd change my mind. I tried to keep it consistent, but when I couldn't, I would run stitches over the fabric to make it look intentional. Pin, sew, pin, sew. That's how it goes. And then back to the sewing machine. Pin, sew, pin, sew, pin, sew. That's how it goes. Now I'm back over to the sewing machine, and I'm starting on the outside. The way that I avoid using lots of pins is to start at the edge. I'm using my clips And what I'm really doing here is trying to figure out a way to not use pins, because pins always end up poking me, and then sometimes they bleed on my project, and so I really try my hardest not to use pins if I don't have to. There are occasions where I absolutely do have to use the pins. For this edge, I didn't. I put the pieces on the edge, and then once I sewed them down, then I decided to go over to sewing horizontally, I guess it is. I'm trying to always keep the fabric as flat as I can as I'm going along. When I add to it, it's like a puzzle, and I want to see where those pieces are going to show, because this is the lapel part, and I have some fabrics, like this one is one of my favorites, and I want it to be able to show. And I'm hoping that when I place it down, that it's going to give the best, be in the best place where it's going to give the most viewing for this fabric, I guess, for lack of a better way to put it. Sometimes when you're sewing and you're putting your pieces on, you can get caught up in just, laying the pieces on and not really thinking about what it's going to look like on the outside. Is this going to be covered when I turn the lapel over, or is this going to show up? So that's something to keep in mind as you're going along making your jacket, if you should choose to make one. This again is very thick because I have the terry cloth, now 2 pieces of terry cloth and my cotton on top. So I do try to keep it slow. The stitches are at 3 at this point because I have I have a lot of thickness here. And I haven't decided how I wanted to finish this. At one point I thought I was going to put some binding at the edges to finish it off, but for the look that I was going for, it wouldn't have looked good. It would have looked too finished, and I didn't want it to look that finished. I want it to have frayed edges and to look more worn, I think the word is. I don't know if antique is the right word, but I don't want it to look brand new. And you'll see at the end I did a little trick to make it not as brand new looking. Sewing along here, I have to move the fabric a lot around underneath the needle, and I try to maximize my needle position when I'm sewing. In other words, when I'm going under here and I'm sewing, I know I'm going to have to put the needle down and move the project around. And I'm going to have to put the whole project through the throat of the machine many times, and so I'm trying to be strategic with the way that I do my sewing. And that's when I place more fabric down while I'm there to cover up this particular spots. Like when I'm coming down this towards me now, I'm thinking about the little triangle under my hand and how I should probably put some fabric under there and have that ready to go, so that way I don't have to lift the whole piece up and put it back under the machine again. And this is what I did. I just I wanted it to have a lot of different shapes, and I wanted it to look put together at the same time. This was a challenge because sometimes you're thinking about the shapes when you're sewing, and sometimes you're thinking about how can I do this without taking the whole project out of the machine, out from underneath the needle, and going forward. I suppose that had I used pins all the way through, then it would make it a lot easier for me. But being, I don't know what I would call it. Let's see. Someone who just tries to avoid using pens. Sometimes I think I might, let's see, now what's the good word for it? I might do an injustice to my project when I'm doing that, because I'm covering up fabric, which some could view as wasting it because you're covering it up. And I'm not necessarily getting the shapes that I exactly wanted when I'm working through the project. But this is the thing that you have to think about when you're sewing. You know, what do you want to do? Do you want it to be exactly perfectly like you had planned it, and you have a plan in your mind what's going to happen? Then you have to pin it and do it. I wing things most of the time, and I get what I get. And I don't always regret it. I think, when I'm doing it, sometimes when I'm sewing and I say, oh, I wanted that shape, and now I just sewed right over that shape, so it's not there anymore. I don't fret about it so much that it ruins my project for me. I just move on to the next. And that's why I love sewing like this. I love working with upcycled, do it my own way projects. I always do it my way anyways. I'm not good with reading directions. I don't like to read directions. I like to do it my way. Sometimes it doesn't always work out good for me, but it's the way that I like to work. So this is what we have so far. I've got the sleeve sewn together, and I'm learning as I'm going, as I keep saying, I'm learning that I don't have to finish the edges off like this because it makes it too bulky. And then when I go to sew it on my machine does not like it. Even though it's a machine that can handle thickness, it doesn't like those thicknesses. So I'm gonna have to work with that. And now I have this, the other sleeve, and I've got just about all of that. And then I have, let's see, I have the back, which should be, this might be a challenge up here, but is my little companion. That's you, Zebby. Zebby, are you my companion? I just put down this new rug for my work in progress basement. As you're working on a quilted jacket like this, you're going to have to do a lot of maneuvering with the big project that you have here. And as I said before, or I'll be saying in a few minutes because I'm doing some voiceovers, you're going to want to minimize the moving around when you're doing your sewing, because you'll have to put the whole project right through the throat of your sewing machine, and it gets very heavy, and it does get tiring working on it, so you do have to give yourself breaks too. But it's coming along nicely here. I am finished with the sleeve, and I am happy to be sewing the sleeve together soon. This is what I'm thinking. You'll need to keep in mind that the goal here is to keep those pieces of fabric, those pretty colors, as flat as possible. Your base, which is the bathrobe, is either flannel or mine is terry cloth. So I'm having a challenge with getting pinched by the pins and leaving the pins in to the point where I don't want to run them over, but I want them to help me as much as possible to keep everything flat. And so the challenge goes on. Sometimes when I get to the curves or I don't know, sometimes if I was just even working on a flat surface, things got a little wonky on me. What I would do was I would take another piece of fabric and I would just place it over it and smooth it out to make it as flat as I could. Now this is probably not the best picture. I was filming with one hand. This is a walk around of what it looks like. And it's a little wonky again, that word, on my dress form, but this is what it looks like up and close. I got camera shy again, so this is the best I could do. I hope you're enjoying it as much as I do. All the pretty colors, I love it. I did end up dyeing it and making it even pinker than it is. Okay, I'm going to go out of my comfort zone and I'm going to get on camera. My coat of many colors is finished. I'm so excited about it. It took a lot of time on the sewing machine and it took a lot of time by hand. I did the inside by hand, as you saw in the beginning if you watched the whole video. I might cut off some of these frays, but right now I'm letting them stay. Washed it, put it in the dryer. The dryer kept stopping. I had to start it. It took a while for it to get dry because it's like it's a quilted jacket. So it's like a quilt, you know, it takes a while. I like my pocket and my other pocket. And then my favorite part is over here. I started getting really creative right here and stripping the fabric, and then I thought it would take forever, but it would be really cool to just do a bunch of stripes. Maybe I'll do my other jacket like that. I don't know, we'll see. I got the base idea because Tracy Myers had done a jacket, but she did all of hers by hand. I did mine, you know, both sewing machine and hand. And then there was this lady at Joann Fabric, which is going out of business in my state, and she did a quilted jacket using a sweatshirt, which I have that plan in my head, and it'll come soon, I think. Right now, I'm happy that I finished this. So, strawberries, the back, strawberry shortcake right here. It's very significant to me because it says 1980 on the bottom, and that's the year that I got married, and that's the year that my first child was born. And as a matter of fact, she loves strawberry shortcake. We called her Andrea Shortcake. And then my youngest, who's turning 24, she loves strawberry shortcake too. We have strawberry shortcake pajamas. We have all kinds of strawberry shortcake video, and I hope that you stayed till the end, and I thank you for watching because it puts me on the YouTube bus, you know, that YouTube speech, and I have a lot more ideas, so hit the notification bell because then you'll know when my things come
they're just going to pop up. And they're just like my ideas. They just pop up. I don't know what I'm going to do next. I have certainly lots of ideas. And if I say the ideas, then they get out of sequence. I don't want that to happen. So let's just say I have a lot of ideas. As a matter of fact, they get me in a lot of trouble sometimes. Just ask my husband. Anyways, thank you for watching, and I will see you in the next video, and I hope you have a great week.